Meaning is not discovered but assigned. Hold this point steady as we begin. Nothing you encounter arrives with meaning attached. Events occur. Words are spoken. Outcomes unfold. Meaning is added only afterward, through judgment. This is not a comforting idea. It removes excuses. It removes the habit of blaming circumstances for how you feel. And it places responsibility exactly where it belongs. You are disturbed not by what happens, but by what you decide it means. This is not a metaphor. It is a description of how the mind operates. An event presents itself. The mind interprets it. The interpretation produces agitation or calm. The sequence is consistent, whether you notice it or not. When this is ignored, life feels hostile. You begin to speak as if situations attack you, as if people inject meaning into your life without consent. But nothing enters your inner life without your agreement. The judgment may be fast. It may be habitual. It may feel automatic. But it is still yours. Stoic discipline begins here. Not with optimism. Not with endurance. With clarity about responsibility. If meaning were inherent in events, freedom would be impossible. You would be permanently at the mercy of circumstances. The fact that meaning is assigned is precisely why inner freedom exists. This is not an invitation to invent pleasant stories. It is a demand to observe the mechanism honestly. When you feel disturbed, the judgment has already occurred. When you feel steady, the same rule applies. Notice this carefully. Everything that follows depends on one clear distinction. There are two domains in your life, and they are not equal. One belongs to you completely. The other does not belong to you at all. Most confusion, frustration, and quiet resentment come from treating these domains as if they overlap. What belongs to you is narrow but absolute. Your judgments, your intentions, your choices, your willingness or refusal to assent to an impression. This is the only area where authority is total. No one can enter it without permission. No event can force a judgment. No outcome can compel agreement. What does not belong to you is vast. Other people's behavior, their opinions, their moods, delays, obstacles, losses, recognition, praise. Even the final outcome of your own efforts. These things arrive and depart according to causes far beyond your command. They can be influenced, but never owned. The error begins when effort is applied to the wrong domain. You attempt to control reactions that are not yours. You argue with reality as if it has violated a contract. You speak internally as if fairness were guaranteed. From this confusion, tension is born. Consider a simple example. You prepare carefully for something important. You act with attention and seriousness. The result is ignored or misunderstood. The disturbance that follows does not come from the outcome itself. It comes from the hidden judgment that the outcome was owed to you. That judgment was added. The event did not bring it. Or consider criticism. Words are spoken. Sound reaches the ear. At that moment, nothing harmful has occurred. Harm appears only if the judgment follows, this diminishes me, or this should not have happened. Without that agreement, the words remain sound. With it, they become an injury. Stoic discipline does not deny effort. It places effort where it belongs. You are responsible for preparing well, speaking clearly, acting with integrity. You are not responsible for how these actions are received. Confusing responsibility with outcome turns discipline into frustration. This distinction is not intuitive. From early habit, the mind reaches outward. It wants reassurance from results. It wants stability from other people's approval. When that reassurance fails to appear, it experiences agitation and calls it injustice. But injustice has not occurred. Only misplacement of authority. When you assign meaning to events that do not belong to you, you surrender freedom voluntarily. You allow external conditions to dictate your inner state. This happens not through force, but through agreement. The mind signs the contract without reading it. Clarity begins when this boundary is respected repeatedly. Not once. Not in theory. In ordinary moments. A delayed response. A plan that fails. A remark that disappoints. Each time, the same question applies: does this belong to my judgment, or does it belong to circumstances? When the answer is clear, energy stops leaking. Effort becomes precise. You stop rehearsing arguments against reality. You stop demanding guarantees. What remains is simpler and more difficult: responsibility without illusion. This is the foundation. Without it, no discussion of discipline, calm, or freedom is coherent. The boundary is clear. The mechanism is not yet. Now we look at what actually creates disturbance. An impression arrives before you have any say in the matter. A look from someone else. A delay. A message that sounds sharp. This first movement is automatic. The Stoics were precise about this. The mind receives impressions the way the body receives weather. There is no virtue or failure here yet. Disturbance does not begin with the impression. It begins when the mind agrees with the story attached to it. Between impression and reaction there is a moment, often brief, often unnoticed. In that moment, the mind either assents or withholds assent. It says, yes, this is bad, or it remains undecided. That single movement is the point of freedom. Everything else follows from it. Most people collapse this sequence. They say, I was angry because of what happened. But that skips a step. What happened was only an impression. Anger required agreement. Without assent, the impression would have passed as information, not as a verdict. Consider criticism again. Someone speaks words that suggest failure or fault. The impression appears: sound, tone, expression. Immediately afterward, the mind may add, I am being disrespected, or this threatens my standing. The disturbance does not come from the words. It comes from the judgment that these words define something essential about you. That judgment feels instantaneous because it is practiced, not because it is forced. Or consider waiting. You expect progress, response, resolution. Time passes without it. The impression is delay. The disturbance arises only when the mind assents to, this should not be happening, or this means I am being ignored. Without that agreement, there is only time passing. This distinction matters because feelings are not the same as judgments. You may feel a tightening in the chest, a quickening of breath, a surge of irritation. These are impressions in the body. They do not yet compel action. They ask a question: will you agree with the interpretation that accompanies them? Stoic discipline does not aim to prevent impressions. That would be absurd. It aims to train assent. The work is not at the level of sensation, but at the level of agreement. This is why freedom is possible even under pressure. The impression may be strong. The pause remains available. Most assent happens by habit. The mind has practiced certain agreements for years. Disrespect means danger. Delay means failure. Silence means rejection. These judgments repeat so often that they masquerade as facts. But repetition does not turn interpretation into reality. The pause before assent does not require long reflection. Often, one breath is enough. Not to calm yourself, but to interrupt the automatic yes the mind is about to give. In that brief space, another option appears: to wait, to examine, or to let the impression pass without endorsement. This is not passivity. Withholding assent does not mean ignoring reality. It means refusing to add conclusions prematurely. You can still respond, correct, act, or speak. But you do so without surrendering inner authority. Once assent is given, disturbance feels inevitable. The mind moves as if dragged. Once assent is withheld, even briefly, a different posture appears. You are no longer inside the reaction. You are observing it. This is the hinge on which Stoic practice turns. Not events. Not emotions. Assent. Understanding this does not create discipline. It only shows where discipline must be applied. This is where most people misunderstand discipline. Discipline is commonly imagined as force applied against resistance, enduring discomfort, suppressing reaction, pushing through reluctance. In this view, discipline is something you impose when life becomes difficult. The Stoic understanding is different and more precise. Discipline is training, not punishment, not endurance for its own sake. Training the mind to respond deliberately at the point of assent. Force operates after the reaction has already taken hold. Training operates before pressure arrives. This is why willpower fails so often. It arrives late, trying to overpower habits that were never examined or practiced differently. Ascesis, the Stoic word for discipline, refers to structured practice. The same way a musician trains fingers or an athlete trains movement, the Stoic trains attention. Specifically, attention to impressions and the moment of agreement. Without this training, the mind reacts exactly as it has rehearsed for years. This matters because no one rises to the occasion under pressure. You fall to the level of your training. When irritation appears, when fear appears, when disappointment appears, the response you give is the one you have practiced most, usually unconsciously. Stoic discipline does not aim to remove emotion. That expectation creates frustration. Emotions arise as impressions. They are part of being human. The work is not to eliminate them, but to avoid surrendering judgment to them. Feeling irritation is not failure. Letting irritation dictate meaning is. Consider how habits are formed. Each time an impression appears and the mind assents automatically, the pathway strengthens. Each time the mind pauses and withholds assent, even briefly, a different pathway is reinforced. This is not philosophical abstraction. It is how training works. Discipline, then, is repetition under low stakes. Not waiting for crisis. Not practicing only when it matters. Small delays. Minor inconveniences. Slight criticisms. These are the gym. If you ignore them, you remain untrained. Many people attempt discipline only at the moment of collapse. When anger has already spoken. When regret has already followed. At that point, the mind says, I should have controlled myself. But control was never trained. Only demanded. Stoic practice reverses this sequence. You train before you need the skill. You notice impressions when they are weak. You practice pausing when nothing dramatic is at stake. You rehearse withholding assent when the cost is small. Over time, this becomes the default response. This is why discipline feels quiet. There is no internal struggle to observe from the outside. No visible heroics. Often, nothing seems to happen at all. An impression arises. It passes. No agreement is given. No story is built. From the outside, it looks like calm. From the inside, it is training functioning as intended. Force seeks to dominate the moment. Discipline prepares for it. The goal is not rigidity. It is responsiveness without surrender. You still act. You still correct. You still decide. But your action is no longer driven by an unexamined verdict. It is chosen. This distinction also explains why discipline cannot be improvised. You cannot demand precision from an untrained instrument. You cannot expect steadiness from a mind that has never practiced pause. Training creates reliability. Without it, reaction is inevitable. Stoic discipline is not harsh. It is exact. It does not ask you to become emotionless. It asks you to become deliberate. That is a different task entirely. Training remains abstract unless it appears in daily life. This practice is proven in ordinary moments. Philosophy fails when it stays abstract. Stoic discipline either appears in the texture of the day or it does not exist at all. The test is not found in extreme situations, but in what you repeatedly overlook as insignificant. Daily practice begins with anticipating impressions accurately. Not pessimistically. Not anxiously. Simply realistically. Delays will occur. People will misunderstand you. Plans will encounter friction. This is not misfortune. It is the normal condition of human affairs. When the mind expects smooth passage, every interruption feels like an offense. When the mind expects friction, interruption arrives as confirmation, not insult. This anticipation is not rehearsal of suffering. It is calibration. You align expectation with reality so that impressions arrive without surprise. Surprise is what accelerates assent. Familiarity slows it down. The second practice is pausing before assent. This does not require withdrawal from life or dramatic restraint. One breath is sufficient. Not to calm emotion, but to interrupt the reflexive yes the mind gives to its own interpretation. That brief pause reopens choice. An impression arises, irritation, impatience, defensiveness. The body responds. Sensation appears. This is not the moment to argue with yourself or to suppress what you feel. It is the moment to withhold judgment. To say internally, an impression is present, and nothing more. That restraint is already discipline. Most people believe they must decide immediately. Respond immediately. Correct immediately. This urgency is rarely necessary. It is usually the impression speaking in the voice of reason. When you pause, even briefly, you reclaim authorship. You respond rather than react. The third practice is evening review. Not self-accusation. Not self-praise. Review without ornament. You examine where assent was given too quickly. Where it was withheld successfully. Where judgment drifted into habit. This review is diagnostic, not moral. Guilt has no role here. Guilt is itself an unexamined judgment, that error requires self-punishment. Stoic practice replaces guilt with clarity. If assent was given too easily, that is information. If restraint appeared, that is confirmation of training. Neither requires emotional amplification. Evening review closes the day by returning authority inward. You do not blame the day. You do not congratulate yourself excessively. You note patterns. You prepare for repetition. Training resumes tomorrow. These practices are small by design. They do not announce themselves. They do not feel impressive. That is precisely why they work. The mind resists grand resolutions but accepts modest repetition. Over time, what once required effort becomes default. The danger is inconsistency. Practicing only when calm. Abandoning practice when irritated. This teaches the mind that discipline is conditional. In reality, the smallest disturbances are the most important training ground. They are frequent, accessible, and forgiving. Do not wait for the right moment to practice. That expectation postpones discipline indefinitely. Practice appears when you notice annoyance at a delay, impatience with a response, or irritation at a remark. These moments arrive daily. They ask nothing dramatic. Only restraint of assent. When daily practice stabilizes, something shifts quietly. You notice fewer internal arguments. Less mental noise after events pass. Not because life has improved, but because meaning is no longer assigned automatically. Authority has returned to its proper place. Consistency produces a different result. Freedom is often misunderstood. Many people imagine freedom as the absence of pressure. No demands. No friction. No constraints. By this definition, freedom depends entirely on external conditions. When circumstances cooperate, you feel free. When they do not, freedom disappears. This version of freedom is fragile by design. Stoic freedom is different. It does not promise ease. It promises sovereignty. Life does not become simpler when you practice discipline. People remain inconsistent. Outcomes remain uncertain. Bodies age. Plans fail. None of this is negotiated away by philosophy. What changes is not the world, but the location of authority within it. When judgment is trained, freedom no longer rises and falls with circumstance. You still prefer certain outcomes. You still work toward them. But your inner state is no longer held hostage by whether they occur. The difference is subtle and decisive. Consider what is usually taken from you when things go wrong. Peace, composure, self-respect. These are not removed by events themselves. They are surrendered when judgment assigns meaning that places authority outside you. This shouldn't have happened. This proves something about me. This takes something away. Nothing outside you can take judgment. It can only be offered. Inner freedom is the condition of not giving that authority away reflexively. It is not a permanent state. It is not an achievement you unlock. It is maintained through repeated refusal to assign meaning hastily. Maintenance, not arrival, is the correct model. This also clarifies a common confusion. Stoic freedom is not emotional numbness. You will still feel disappointment. You will still feel attraction and aversion. These impressions continue to arise. Freedom lies in not being compelled by them to accept conclusions you have not examined. Comfort and freedom are not the same. Comfort depends on stability. Freedom depends on clarity. Comfort seeks protection from disturbance. Freedom accepts disturbance without surrender. One is passive and brittle. The other is active and durable. This is why Stoic freedom does not require life to improve. Nothing external must change for it to begin. Not your job. Not your relationships. Not your circumstances. The work starts exactly where you are, with the judgments you are already making. This is also why freedom cannot be given. No one can reassure you into it. No system can guarantee it. No philosophy can deliver it without practice. It appears only where responsibility is accepted without negotiation. Many people resist this because it feels severe. They want freedom without responsibility. Calm without discipline. Relief without examination. Stoicism refuses this bargain. It does not console. It clarifies. And yet, this clarity is what makes stability possible. When authority is returned inward, events lose their power to dictate meaning. You respond to what happens without adding verdicts about what it means for your worth, your standing, or your future. Action remains. Panic does not. This form of freedom is quiet. It does not announce itself. Often, others do not notice it at all. That is not a flaw. It is evidence that freedom no longer depends on recognition. What cannot be taken from you is not success or comfort. It is the capacity to withhold assent. As long as that remains intact, freedom remains possible in every situation. This brings us to the final responsibility. Nothing here requires escalation. Nothing you have read points outward for resolution. No circumstance must change. No person must behave differently. No outcome must improve before steadiness becomes possible. The conclusion is quieter than expectation, and more demanding. Events remain neutral. Meaning is added. Disturbance appears only after judgment assents. This sequence does not pause because it is inconvenient. It pauses only when you practice pausing it. Responsibility for that pause cannot be transferred. This is why Stoic discipline refuses comfort. Comfort implies that something external must be softened or rearranged. Discipline clarifies that the decisive movement occurs within you, before reaction hardens into certainty. When you miss this, you blame the day. When you see it, you take responsibility without drama. Imperfection does not disqualify you from this practice. You will assent too quickly at times. You will notice after the fact. That noticing is not failure. It is evidence that attention is present. The work resumes immediately. No guilt is required. No self-accusation improves judgment. What changes over time is not life's behavior, but your relationship to it. Fewer internal arguments. Shorter recoveries. Less urgency to explain or defend. Not because you suppress reaction, but because you no longer rush to endorse it. Meaning waits for your consent. Nothing outside you guarantees this. Nothing outside you prevents it. Inner freedom is maintained, not achieved. It remains available wherever judgment remains yours. The work is simple. It is not easy. And it does not end. Return to what is yours.